It sat there on the illuminated screen of my smartphone, a sterile gray bubble containing a sentence that would dismantle 30 years of fatherhood. Don't rely on me for anything later on. I have my own future to worry about. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't a drunken slur leaving a voicemail at 2 a.m. It was a calculated, sober text message sent at 9:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. I read it once, then I read it again, cleaning my glasses as if a smudge on the lens could change the cruelty of the syntax. My son, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the man I had put through university, had just declared his independence not from my authority, but from his humanity. He thought he was setting a boundary. He didn't realize he was severing the lifeline to the only safety net he had ever known. If you are listening to this and have ever felt the cold shock of betrayal from the one person you would have sacrificed everything for, please take a moment to join this community. It helps to know we aren't walking this path alone in the dark. I had spent 4 decades sculpting a life in Savannah, Georgia, that I could look back on with a sense of completion. My wife, Catherine, and I hadn't come from money. I worked in logistics, managing freight at the port, and she was a librarian. We were the type of people who bought used cars, fixed our own plumbing, and put the difference into a diversified portfolio. When Catherine passed away 6 years ago from a sudden aneurysm, the silence in our brick colonial house was deafening. I was 62 then. We had planned to travel to Italy to see the Amalfi Coast. Instead, I found myself walking through rooms filled with her echoes, surrounded by the assets we had accumulated for a someday that she would never see. I wasn't a tycoon, but the Port Authority pension combined with our aggressive savings meant I was worth significantly more than my neighbors assumed. I had the house, a rental property downtown, and a brokerage account that had weathered every recession since the 80s. It was meant to be our security. Now it was just mine, or so I assumed. Lucas was our only child. He was bright, charismatic, and entirely allergic to hardship. Catherine had always softened the edges of the world for him, and perhaps I had been too busy at the docks to correct the course. He grew up believing that a safety net was actually a hammock. He married Sophia 5 years ago. She was sharp, ambitious, and had a taste for things that signaled status. Imported SUVs, designer handbags, members-only clubs. They gave me 2 grandchildren, Leo and Ivy, who were the absolute light of my declining years. For a long time, I ignored the red flags. I ignored how Lucas only called when a business opportunity required capital. I ignored how Sophia checked the brand of my watch, but never asked about my blood pressure. I told myself this was just how the modern generation operated. They were busy. They were building their lives. I was the patriarch. It was my job to provide the foundation, even if they were chipping away at the concrete. The financial bleeding began subtly. It wasn't theft. It was a slow drip of emergencies. 3 years ago, it was $22,000 for a down payment on a house because the market was exploding. I wrote the check. Then it was $8,000 because Sophia's transmission failed and she couldn't drive the kids to school in a rental. I wired the funds. Then came the investments. Lucas had a friend with a tech startup in Austin. He needed $15,000 to get in on the ground floor. I hesitated that time. Catherine would have asked to see a business plan, but when I paused, Lucas sighed, a sound heavy with disappointment. Dad, you have it sitting there doing nothing. Do you want me to succeed, or do you want me to struggle like you did? That stung. I hadn't struggled. I had worked, but I gave him the money. I kept a ledger in my study, more out of habit than suspicion. Over the last 4 years, the total had climbed to $82,000. I wasn't funding their emergencies. I was subsidizing an illusion of wealth they hadn't earned. The catalyst wasn't money, ironically. It was a ride. I had a scheduled cataract surgery. It was a routine procedure, but the hospital required a designated driver to sign me out. I couldn't take a taxi or a rideshare service. It had to be a family member or a responsible guardian. I asked Lucas a week in advance. He said he'd check his calendar. 2 days before the surgery, I called to confirm. He didn't answer. I texted him. Just checking on Tuesday. Need to be at the hospital by 7 a.m. That was the context. I wasn't asking for a kidney. I wasn't asking for a loan. I was asking for 3 hours of his time to ensure his father could see clearly. The response didn't come until the next morning. It was that sterile gray bubble. Don't rely on me for anything later on. I have my own future to worry about. He wasn't just saying no to the ride. He was preemptively resigning from the role of a son. I sat in my study, the leather chair feeling cold against my back. The morning sun was filtering through the Spanish moss outside, painting patterns on the floor, but I felt like I was freezing. Don't rely on me. The message was a declaration. It was a preemptive strike against my aging process. He looked at me and didn't see a father. He saw a looming burden. He saw a future of diaper changes and doctor visits, and he was opting out before the first symptom appeared. I didn't reply. I didn't beg. I didn't remind him that I had wiped his fevered brow when he had chicken pox or paid for the arms that gave him that confident smile. I simply placed the phone face down. If you have ever realized that the people you love see you as an obligation rather than a blessing, you know the specific heartbreak I'm describing. It's a hollow ache in the center of your chest. If you're with me this far, please subscribe. It tells me that decency still matters to someone. That afternoon, I called Mr. Sterling. He was a shark of an estate attorney, a man who wore bow ties and destroyed opposing counsel with a soft southern drawl. We had set up my original will years ago. William, he said, his voice gravely over the phone, to what do I owe the pleasure? You sound resolute. I need to restructure everything, Sterling, and I need to do it by Friday. I drove to his office in downtown Savannah. I brought the ledger, I brought the bank statements, and I brought the text message printed out on a sheet of A4 paper. Sterling reviewed the documents in silence. Then he looked at my accounts. William, did you know there have been logins to your investment portal from an IP address in Atlanta? That's where Lucas lives, isn't it? I went cold. I had given Lucas the password years ago, in which case I was incapacitated. I hadn't changed it since Catherine died. He wasn't just ungrateful. He was monitoring the inventory. We are going to create a revocable living trust, Sterling explained, sliding a fresh legal pad across the mahogany desk. We moved the deed to the house, the rental property, and the brokerage accounts into the trust. You control it until you die or become incapacitated. And the beneficiary, I asked, that's entirely up to you. We spent 3 hours drafting the Vance Family Trust. The primary beneficiaries became the Savannah Historical Preservation Society, the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, and a scholarship fund for logistics management at the local university. I allocated a specific locked trust for my grandchildren, Leo and Ivy, to be accessed only when they turned 25 for education or a first home. Lucas and Sophia, their names were excised from the document with surgical precision. I wasn't doing this out of rage. I was doing it out of respect for his desire. He didn't want to be relied upon? Fine. Then he wouldn't be burdened with the inheritance that came from the life he wanted no part of. I moved the assets on a Thursday. By Monday, the digital alerts must have hit Lucas's phone. I was in the garage, sanding down an old oak table I was restoring when my pocket buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it rang. Dad, his voice was breathless, panicked. Dad, I can't see the brokerage account. The dashboard is blank. It says, access revoked. Is the bank having a glitch? I kept sanding, the rhythmic shh of the sandpaper filling the silence. No glitch, Lucas. I moved the assets. Moved them? Moved them where? You can't just move $750,000 without telling me. I didn't think I needed to consult you, I said, blowing the dust off the wood. After all, you have your own future to worry about. I'm just managing mine. He arrived at my doorstep 4 hours later. He must have driven 80 miles an hour the whole way down I-16. He didn't eat alone. He brought Sophia. I met them on the porch. I didn't invite them in. That felt important. This house was no longer their waiting room. What's going on, William? Sophia asked. Her tone was sharp, the way one spoke to a naughty child. Lucas is frantic. He says you've hidden the money. I haven't hidden anything, I said calmly. I've secured it in a trust. A trust? Lucas's face was a mask of disbelief. Why? Who is the beneficiary? That's private, I said. But since you've made it clear you cannot be relied upon for my care, I needed to ensure my assets were structured to provide for me independently. You're off the hook, son. You're free. Is this about the text? Lucas shouted, throwing his hands up. Dad, I was stressed. I had a meeting. You're retaliating because I couldn't drive you to a damn eye appointment? It wasn't the appointment, Lucas, I said, leaning against the door frame. It was the statement. You told me not to rely on you. I believed you. This is insane, Sophia interjected, stepping closer. You aren't thinking clearly. This is paranoia. We've been researching this. Sudden financial shifts in the elderly. It's a sign of cognitive decline. There it was, the gaslighting, the weaponization of my age against my autonomy. I'm perfectly sane, Sophia. Are you? She challenged. You're giving away our inheritance, Lucas's birthright, because of a text message. That's not sanity, William. That's dementia. And we won't let you destroy this family's future because you're having a senile moment. Leave my property, I said. My voice was low, but it carried the weight of 30 years on the docks. Now. 2 weeks later, the letter arrived. It wasn't a birthday card. It was a legal notice from a firm in Atlanta. Competency evaluation request for Mr. William Vance. They were petitioning the court to appoint a temporary conservator over my estate, citing erratic financial behavior and suspected early-stage cognitive impairment. They wanted to freeze the trust. My own son was suing to take control of my life. He wanted to strip me of my rights so he could get his hands on the money Catherine and I had saved. I read the letter in the kitchen. I felt a tremor in my hand, not from age, but from a profound, vibrating fury. I had fed him, I had clothed him, I had loved him, and now he was trying to bury me while I was still breathing. The hardest part wasn't the legal battle, it was the silence where the grandchildren used to be. I called to speak to Leo on his 7th birthday. Sophia answered. You don't get to speak to him, she said. Sophia, this is between us. Don't bring the boy into it. You made your choice, William. You chose your money over your family. If you want to see Leo or Ivy again, you will dissolve that trust, reinstate Lucas as the executor, and apologize. Until then, you don't exist to them. She hung up. I sat there looking at the empty chair where Leo used to sit and color. The house felt like a tomb. I drove to the marina and sat with my friend Henry, an old shrimper who knew better than to ask too many questions. We drank iced tea in silence, watching the tide go out. I felt like I was being erased. The pressure mounted. Lucas sent emails detailing memory lapses I had never had, claiming I forgot names at Christmas or that I got lost driving to the store. Lies. All of it manufactured to build a paper trail for the judge. They were banking on me being too tired to fight. They thought the threat of losing the grandkids would break me. They thought I would surrender the checkbook just to hear Ivy's voice again, and God help me for a night. I considered it. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, thinking, is it worth it? Is the money worth dying alone? But then I remembered the text. Don't rely on me. If I gave in now, I would be nothing more than an ATM to them, a hostage in my own home. I wouldn't be their grandfather. I would be their sponsor. We need a forensic psychiatrist, Sterling told me, the best in the state. We aren't just going to defend you. We are going to make their claim look ridiculous. I met with Dr. Aris in a neutral office. He was a stern man who asked me to count backward from 100 by sevens to recall 3 objects after 5 minutes to explain the nuances of my investment strategy. We spoke for 4 hours. I told him about the text. I told him about the $82,000. I showed him the ledger. At the end of the session, Dr. Aris closed his folder. Mr. Vance, your cognitive faculties are sharper than men 20 years your junior. You aren't suffering from dementia. You are suffering from heartbreak. The hearing was in a small courtroom in downtown Savannah. Lucas and Sophia wore somber colors, looking like they were attending a funeral, my funeral. Their lawyer tried to paint me as a confused, bitter old man who was being manipulated by his attorney. Then Dr. Aris took the stand. He didn't just clear me, he dismantled them. He testified that my decision to create the trust was a highly rational response to demonstrated financial exploitation. He read the text message into the court record. The judge, a woman who looked like she had no patience for foolishness, peered over her glasses at Lucas. You told your father not to rely on you, Mr. Vance. It appears he has followed your instructions. Petition denied. Case dismissed with prejudice." Lucas looked like he had been slapped. Sophia looked at the floor. We had won the battle, but Sterling wasn't done. "William," he said as we walked out of the courthouse, "during the discovery phase, my forensic accountant found something you needed to see. It explains the desperation." He handed me a file. It wasn't just a lifestyle they were funding, it was debt. Massive, suffocating debt. Lucas had leveraged himself to the hilt. He had taken out loans against the expected inheritance. He had engaged in high-risk real estate speculation, flipping houses with hard money loans at exorbitant interest rates. The market had cooled, and he was holding 3 properties he couldn't sell, paying 12% interest. He was underwater for nearly $350,000. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They weren't just greedy. They were drowning. They needed my death or my incapacity to cover their bad bets. That's why they needed control. They needed to liquidate my assets to stop their own ship from sinking. I wasn't a father to them. I was a bailout package. I drove home, the file sitting on the passenger seat. I felt a strange mix of pity and revulsion. They had gambled with money that wasn't theirs. And when the bill came due, they tried to have me commit to pay for it. Chapter 18. I didn't call them. I wrote a letter. Old-fashioned, permanent. "Lucas and Sophia, I know about the loans. I know about the unsold properties and the $350,000 debt. I know you borrowed against my life. My trust stands. The beneficiaries remain the charities and the locked educational funds for the children. You will not receive a single cent to clear your gambling debts. You made those wagers. You will pay the price. However, I am not a monster. I have prepaid for 1 year of family counseling and financial planning services for you both. The contact information is enclosed. If you want to save your marriage and your future, I suggest you go. Don't come to my house. Do not call me. If you ever use my grandchildren as bargaining chips again, I will petition the court for visitation rights based on the evidence of your instability, and I will win. Dad, the fallout was quick. Without the promise of my capital to backstop their loans, the hard money lenders moved in. Lucas and Sophia lost their house in Atlanta. They had to sell the luxury SUVs. They moved into a rented townhouse on the outskirts of the city. I heard through the grapevine that Sophia had gone back to work as a paralegal, and Lucas was taking a mid-level management job at a logistics firm, ironically doing the same hard work I had done at his age. I filed for grandparent visitation rights. Given their financial upheaval and the documented attempt to weaponize the children, the family court was sympathetic. I got to see Leo and Ivy 1 weekend a month. The first time they visited without their parents hovering, Ivy ran into my arms and smelled like vanilla and childhood. "We missed you, Grandpa," she whispered. "I missed you too, sweet pea. I'm not going anywhere." It has been 2 years since the text message. My life is quiet now, but it is peaceful. I've taken up painting bad watercolors of the marshlands, but they make me happy. I volunteer at the Children's Hospital twice a week, reading stories to kids who are fighting battles much harder than mine. Lucas and I speak occasionally, stiff, short conversations about pickup times for the kids. He looks tired. He looks older. He looks like a man who is finally learning that you cannot build a house on a foundation you didn't pour yourself. I didn't lose my son. I lost the illusion of who I wanted him to be. In return, I found the reality of who I am. I am William Vance. I am enough, and I am no longer waiting to be taken care of. If this story resonates with you, if you understand the strength it takes to choose dignity over disrespect, please subscribe. It's a small gesture, but it tells me that we're building a world where still integrity counts for something. Thank you for listening.